Rajiv ji gave a bit of introduction to the book, but I want to focus on corporations, corporate honchos, corporate structure. As you might have heard, in recent times, there is a big buzz in the corporate world about public-private partnerships, social impact investing, ESG, standing for Environment, Social Justice, Governance, CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility, Stakeholder Capitalism, and other very nice sounding names and terms. Let's unpack a few of these because, like all terminology that the left puts out, there is something more devious behind these terms. So Harvard has been pushing the ESG movement globally, standing for Environment, Social Justice, and Governance. It's a way for companies to do good and take care of stakeholders. Now, just to take a little detour, you all must be familiar with the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is a collection of elite individuals globally. You can go to their website. There are many Indian billionaires who are part of it. They're all very concerned about carbon dioxide emissions, global warming. And it's an irony that every year they descend in their private jets, no less, into Davos to talk about the environment and what we all should do. Now, the World Economic Forum is a very powerful organization, and it pushes ESG as a social credit system onto corporations. And a lot of the ESG social credit ideology, of course, comes from Harvard, which is based on wokeism and critical race theory. Now, wokeism enters the corporation through ESG, and the World Economic Forum promotes ESG and comes up with metrics and a rubric to assess companies. Now, every Indian company, like the Tatas and Mahindras, all of them, all the big companies, all the public companies are embracing ESG. There are companies like Pricewaterhouse and Ernst & Young that are providing compliance services on ESG matters. Now let's look at environment, the E of the ESG. E stands for environment and sustainability. So who comes up with the metrics, right? So we should ask ourselves if corporations have the moral right to say that an oil company is bad for the environment, but a meat company is okay. So these are sort of the issues you will get into. Now, should corporates have the authorities, but there's a bigger question, should corporates have the authority to determine social justice and policy that constitutes environmental sustenance? Is it their role? Yeah, because this seems like a government's role. And the other bigger thing when you talk about corporate structure is traditionally corporates have had a fiduciary responsibility, which means they owe it to their shareholders to maximize profits. So it's a shareholder responsibility that they have. Now, we are moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And what does that mean? So if you as an investor invest 100 rupees in the stock market in a certain company, you would expect that the management would work their rear end off to give you the maximum profit. because that's all that you want them to do. But that has changed with ESG entering corporations. Now, the World Economic Forum and the corporate elites are pushing a woke-infused ESG, where they say you can sacrifice profits, but take care of environment, social justice, and governance, right? And you as a shareholder have no say about it. So there is this fiduciary responsibility that they have, but they are not, meeting their fiduciary responsibility. So this is a huge thing, because what happens, and I will illustrate with a small example, that this can be really dangerous, because ESG contains, especially the social justice part, contains woke ideas. It contains critical race theory. That's the lens that they use to define what is social justice. Now, essentially with ESG, pushing ESG, the corporates and the WEF have become the dictators, and they are looking to have a new world order and redistribute wealth. And it's not their own wealth that they are planning to redistribute, as you can see. Now, the World Economic Forum has not just gone to public companies, but they're also looking at venture capital firms and forcing ESG compliance on venture capital firms and mandating that the new ventures that they invest in are also ESG compliant. And they look to, and they advise them to use nonprofits like Amnesty International and take their reports into as a guidance for human rights. So you know where this is heading. Now, the Omidyar Network and Ford Foundation did not want to stop at venture capital, but they also want private equity firms and small private companies. So recently they started another nonprofit to ensure that private companies are also part of the ESG bandwagon. Now, you might say, I'm a small company and I really don't care. Now, what will happen is, tomorrow you're a small company, you're producing a product and you want to ship it to your customer. The shipping company can tell you that you're not ESG compliant and therefore they can cancel you. So the woke culture of cancellation also comes into corporations. Tomorrow you want to insure you need insurance for your company, and the insurance company will say, sorry, I can't insure you, or you have higher insurance rates because you're not ESG compliant. So it's going to affect one and all. So there's no escaping. Now, what is even more scary is the fact that, so the World Economic Forum had, there was a foundation called, let me get that. It's called the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, which is actually headed by a guy who was on the World Economic Forum. He's from a seminary, a Christian background. So, of course, the missionary, people do not want to leave this opportunity. So, a person from the seminary who was closely associated with the World Economic Forum started this foundation called the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, RFBF. Now, RFBF is very interested in promoting religious freedom at the workplace. So they want employees to bring their whole selves, who wouldn't want that, bring their whole selves to work, which means allowing them to express their religious identity in full force at the workplace. And they want companies to give them the freedom to express their religious identity, and also encourage their employees to express their religious identity. Now, you can well imagine if this happens, corporates now would be churches, essentially, and involved in proselytizing. So essentially what's happening is the shareholder is foregoing some of his profits to so that it can be spent on the stakeholders, and social justice, and through the social justice pipeline, you are going to be spending money on letting employees express their religious freedom at the workplace. Now, they've come up with something called the READY Index, which is called the Corporate Religious Equity Diversity Inclusion Index. And it ranks for the first time Fortune 100 companies based on the variety of criteria related to their public commitment to providing faith-friendly workplaces. So this READY Index, so each company will be scored on the READY Index, and this number will be then fed into the ESG score, and companies will be rated on how faith-friendly they are. So our Swamijis, of course, are not in touch with, corporations, but the Christian seminaries are already sending their envoys to corporation HR departments to say, please let our people of all faiths express their religion at the workplace, which means proselytization can happen at the workplace. And of course, the Hindus and other dharmic faiths do not proselytize, and therefore they are going to succumb to conversion at the workplace. So this is happening. The RFBF, in fact, chief, I think his name is Gunn, some Brian Gunn or something like that. He had put a tweet saying, excited to go to India last year. Excited that I'm traveling to India to talk about religious freedom at the workplace. So Breaking India 1.0 is now not at the villages, it's now entered the corporate space. And corporations have gone without scrutiny as far as the Breaking India ideologies are concerned. But with wokeism entering the corporate place, this is a big issue that we need to be aware of, especially when it comes to conversion and religious expression of religious freedom. Also, another thing that's happening is with the FCRA, the tightening of FCRA regulations and cancelling of FCRA licenses, lots of foreign NGOs are now going as for-profit companies into India, and they are becoming FDI. So the FCRA is actually converting into FDIs because they don't mind paying taxes, and they won't be subject to any scrutiny, and also they can mine data, and data is money, and so they can conduct business as usual with much more freedom using the foreign direct investment route than the FCRA route. So I think corporations overall, from a structure standpoint, the business practices standpoint, and when they say things like social impact investing and mining data for various do-good projects, we have to keep an eye on this. I think for the next 10 years, I think what business people do, what very wealthy individuals do, how corporate structures being misused. These are the issues I think for the next decade would be highly problematic, and Breaking India forces could be coming through this pipeline. So thank you so much for listening, and it was wonderful being here.